Lloyd Blankfein is one of the world's most influential corporate leaders. He is the chairman and CEO of Goldman Sachs. He oversees more than $900 billion in assets and nearly 33,000 employees. This morning, he is hosting the company's North American Energy Summit. He's here in Studio 57 to talk about the economy, the energy revolution changing America's place in the world, and much more. Welcome.
Thank you, Charlie. Good to be here.
Let me begin with the economy overall, the global economy. I mean, people say it's getting better and it's picking up, and your own analysts and economists say that. But what does it need to pick up a higher level of growth? What do we need for a spurt in the global economy?
Well, that's a big issue. I'd say people don't just think it's growing. The economy is growing, and the U.S. is especially growing. I think I can't think that growth is embedded now, but it's not growing fast enough to increase the amount of jobs. The Federal Reserve feels a burden to move that along, and so right now we have a situation where we have growth in the United States, but central bank policy in the United States, and in fact central bank policy around the world, in Japan, in China, and of course in Europe most recently, is to be very, very stimulative. So all of that is very, is meant to take the market forward and increase GDP.
But at the same time, people look at corporations in America and around the world saying they're sitting on a lot of cash.
Right.
Why aren't they spending that money on plants and new employees?
Well, there was a very big trauma in the financial crisis. There's a lot of liquidity. Interest rates are very low. I mean, to be able to borrow money near to zero, and for companies not to put money to work that they get at a zero rate and think they can make a profit is
so why aren't they doing it?
Economics, you're dealing with sentiment, you're dealing with psychology, the human condition. It's a soft science, not a hard science. And so all you could do is deal with the reality and try to advance it along. And so I think legislation is not a tool that's available. There's not going to be a lot of new legislation in this country because of the divided Congress, and so the Federal Reserve is left with all the policy to carry itself.
So your company is hosting the North American Energy Summit this week. What are you hoping to see that will help capitalize on the energy boom? What needs to happen, Lloyd, for that to...
A few things need to be happening. For one thing, we should recognize what a blessing that North America and the United States in particular has. I mean, all of us of our age grew up in a world where we just took it as granted that we were going to have to import energy from some of the most troubled places in the world, and some of those troubled places had their troubles because they had energy in the first place. Now, all of a sudden, we have a completely different view forward, and if you want to think how that would change the world going forward, just think how the world over the last 40 years might have been different if we didn't have our energy situation that we had. Just think of what we've had to do to secure the sea lanes, the geopolitics of the last few years, the economy, the stresses and strains that we had. Going forward, we have a terrific situation going forward. We should recognize it, but it's a gift, but it has to be picked up, and we have to go out and meet it. Regulation has to be clarified. It's very hard to go out and make big investments to take advantage of for example, the shale energy if we don't know if it's always going to be there, at what price it's going to be there, whether the country is going to allow it to be exported, or whether it's going to go and, in effect, subsidize U.S. manufacturing. Big investments have to be made, and there has to be clarity before people are willing to make investments that have a 5 or 10 year payback.
I mean, America's increasing energy independence is one of the brightest spots in the U.S. economy, right? What is the biggest worry for you? What worries you?
Well, the people on both sides of this, first of all, everybody is pro-energy and everybody's pro-environment. It's not a question of somebody being right and somebody being wrong. Everybody's right. You have to reconcile these concerns also with the opportunity. The country needs to grow economically. We need to have jobs. That's an imperative. And we need to have jobs and growth in a sustainable way. And so those interests have to be reconciled.
Let me ask you, Charlie brought this up about the amount of cash that American companies are sitting on, $1.5 trillion. And yet the unemployment rate has ticked down a little bit, but wages have not risen. How do you deal with income inequality? I mean, as the CEO of Goldman Sachs, what do you think about income inequality?
Well, we'd like to... Income inequality is a very destabilizing thing in the country. In other words, it's responsible for the divisions in the country. The divisions could get wider. If you can't legislate, you can't deal with problems. You can't deal with problems, you can't drive growth, and you can't drive the success of the country. It's a very big issue and something that has to be dealt with. One of the ways of dealing with it is to make the pie grow.
Right.
And people are better at making the pie grow, but I have to say, too much of the GDP over the last generation has gone to too few of the people.
What do you mean making the pie grow?
Well, the economic system has to do two things. You have to grow a pie, and you have to distribute it in a proper way. Both contribute to the stability of society. If you grow the pie, but too few people enjoy the benefits of it and the fruit, then you'll have an unstable society.
But that's exactly the point that people like Tom Piketty and even Hillary Clinton there are making, that there's real danger if income inequality and the way the top 1% and what they represent continues and the trend continues.
Well, part of this is, listen, yes, full stop. And if there was a lever to pull and a button to push, we'd pull it and, it would be pulled and it would be pushed. People are trying to grapple with the reasons for it. So, for example, technology, media, the new economy. If you do something really well, the entire world beats a path to your door. Mm-hmm. The number 3, number 5, number 400 player gets nothing. It's almost a winner-take-all. Jobs. The world has been enriched by the fact that it's been flat and that manufacturing could go, labor can go to the cheapest places. It's a one world. Barriers have come down, trade has gone up. But it's also gone and contributed to income inequality, because if you win really big, and if you lose everything if you can't compete.
But Lloyd, you were not always one of the, there's a big gap between the have and have-nots. You were one of the have-nots. You were a scholarship student at Harvard. You said you were not one of the popular kids. You sold peanuts and hot dogs at Yankee Stadium. So you know what people are going through. You remember those days.
No, I grew up in Brooklyn, and in the projects, of course, and I had tremendous opportunity, and other people didn't find opportunity.
But this is the thing that I want people to know about Lloyd Blankfein. I know from reliable sources you're a good husband, you're a good father. You were recently named one of the top...
The only reliable source for that is my wife.
Yeah, that's why I said reliable sources.
Good.
One of the top financial leaders in the country, which I think is so ironic from someone who, at first, when you first applied to Goldman, you didn't get the job.
Yeah.
So what is it that you do to keep people engaged at Goldman Sachs? What makes you so great at what you do?
We have... At Goldman Sachs, one of the things is we have a great drawing power. We get the smartest kids who come out of great schools and not so great schools, but they're the top performing people. They're motivated. They want to work well. And I can tell you, if you get great input, you can get great output. And I'll tell you, and the firm has a great convening power. Mm-hmm. And from that comes a lot of influence. But it's really the influence of being able to draw people, like the energy conference that we're having today. We're going to have a conference of some of the most influential people that bear on this issue. We have the finance ministers of Mexico. Again, it's a North American conference. Mexico, Canada, Secretary Lew, the Treasury Secretary of the United States.
And you have an intern traveling with you today. I'm thinking, what a lesson he's getting today.
Yes, we have an intern traveling with us.
Yes, I'm thinking, that's not a bad job. That's not a bad job. Thank you, Lloyd Blankfein.
Well, thank you very much.
Really good to have you at the table.
Thank you.